The story happened to me in the early 2000s. I was vacationing in the Caribbean with my family when I was about 9 or 10 years old. This particular island, like many in the Caribbean, was largely impoverished. Of course, the resort communities where all of the tourists flocked to was a very beautiful slice of paradise. As a young kid staying at this fancy vacation spot, you don't really think about the reality that you're in a foreign country that you don't know very well. You're not familiar with what goes on outside of those gates of the resort, and certainly aren't aware that, as well as being known for gorgeous beaches, many islands in the Caribbean are hubs for human trafficking, drug smuggling, and etc. The sheer sketchiness of what I'm about to describe didn't fully hit me until years later when I was in high school and reading about the disappearance of Amy Bradley and Natalie Holloway, who both vanished while on vacation in the Caribbean in the late 1990s, early 2000s. One night, I left the resort with my family to go on one of those sunset boat rides, one of those sort of deals. We joined another family and took a shuttle to the marina that was maybe about half an hour away from the resort. I remember as we rode to the marina, I got more and more of a sense of how destitute this whole less touristy area was on the island. I saw many of the locals living in small ramshack huts made of salvaged metal, and the landscape was just like a barren desert, unlike the lush gardens that were watered daily within the walls of the resort. Anyway, the shuttle dropped us off at the docks, and we went for our boat tour. It was an amazing time. The boat's crew pointed out unique wildlife and told us about the history of the islands. By the time we returned to the docks, it was pitch black outside, probably around 11 p.m., and barely being 10 years old, I was thoroughly exhausted. I hopped out of the boat and walked along the dock back to the parking lot where the shuttle had dropped us off earlier. My parents and the other adults who were with us didn't really seem to pay any attention to me, thanks to Captain Morgan and Stella Ortiz. And by the time that they got off the boat, I was a decent 200 feet ahead of them. Now, the marina itself was very well lit, but as soon as I turned the corner to the parking lot, I may have just fallen into a cave of darkness. I could hardly see anything. I squinted my eyes to try to see if that van that we had arrived in was in the parking lot nearby. But after a few seconds, somebody suddenly grabbed my shoulder very tight. "Who did you come here with?" The voice scolded, and I immediately began freaking out because I thought I was in trouble. "Somebody drove you here." I began to speak to try to explain that I was with my family and that we were waiting for our driver, but this man cut me off. "You drove here with me. Here, come to my car." At this point, this man began pulling me further into the darkness of the parking lot, towards a vehicle I had never seen before. I wouldn't even say that I was panicking at this point. I was very confused and knew that something was definitely not right about this situation. But I'd been raised to just always listen to adults and didn't want to get in trouble for not listening to this guy. But as he continued to pull me toward his car, I realized that this was way too small to fit the number of people that had arrived with us. And then I had started pulling against this guy, trying to break his grip. I was about to raise my voice and start screaming, when suddenly, a set of floodlights turned on and lit up the parking lot. My parents and the group of people that we were with turned the corner and the guy immediately let go of my arm. I looked up at him and all I remembered is how scary he looked. He was bald and had scars on his face. He was probably in his late 40s. Clearly, he didn't realize that the entire group of people were about 30 seconds behind me. His eyes were wide, and he had a dumbfounded "oh shit" expression. One of the men who had worked for the dock called out and said something to him, but he sort of threw up his arms and shrugged and quickly walked away. On my way back to the resort, my dad asked me something along the lines of, "What did that guy want from you?" And in my childish naivety, I said, "I think he thought that I rode with his shuttle, and maybe he thought that I was lost or something." And apparently this explanation was a perfect, reasonable one, because we never really spoke about it again. Anyway, I guess the moral of the story is, if you have young children and you end up taking them to some exotic, unfamiliar locations, remind them to be smart and keep their guard up, even in paradise. My wife and I were married during the summer of 2012 and planned our honeymoon trip to one of our favorite vacation spots, Aruba. We had arrived in our hotel and began immediately mingling downtown and soaking up the sunshine at the beach. As we visited a very prominent hotel, we heard the bar there was amazing. We noticed a sign for free horseback rides. The catch was you had to sit through one of those very long and drawn-out timeshare speeches and actually see the timeshare housing at the hotel. We got through that and we were given horseback riding vouchers. The next day I called the horseback riding company and requested their service and told them that we had the vouchers for payment. They said they had an opening in the next 2 days and they would pick us up from the hotel. Fast forward to a few days later, the company arrived at our hotel and picked us up in an old, rundown, beat-up van. Upon entering the van, I noticed that the driver's dashboard was lit up like a Christmas tree. I had never seen so many lights on at once. We close the doors and he drives up to this ranch. We can hear all sorts of noises that sounded like this van was crumbling underneath us. We get to the ranch and there are no other riders there, just us. It is a very remote area of Aruba, across the island away from the other tourist sections. He tells us to wait over near the shed and he will be right back. As I look around, I see no horses and I notice something weird. As I look through the shed window, I see it is completely empty. I walk over to the house and look through the huge glass door. Empty. My wife and I immediately got a feeling of dread, and as if something really bad was about to happen. As the owner comes back around the house, I ask where the other riders are. He says it's just me and my wife. Wouldn't he just wait for more riders just to save money? Seems kind of like a waste of time. I told him that my wife was feeling really sick, and that we just wanted to go back to the hotel. He starts begging us to stay, and asking her to just hang out and see if the nausea will stop and wait it out. Maybe it would pass, he said. I told him that I was going to go now, or I will walk. He very slowly walks us back to the van, gets in the van, and turns the ignition. It won't start. He exclaims, "I must have run out of gas." He then gets on the phone and begins speaking in a language that sounded like Spanish. He was shouting and sounded very upset. He hangs up the phone and says that somebody is coming to meet us there to fix the car. I immediately take my wife by the hand and we leave that van and start walking very fast back to the hotel. As I am walking, I see a taxi car in somebody's driveway. As I look closer, I can see somebody is sitting on the front porch. I ask, "Can you give us a ride back to the hotel?" The gentleman on the porch did a double take, as he seemed like he couldn't believe that tourists were walking around in his neighborhood. He says, "Yes." Then we get into his car, and he starts taking us home. He asks us where we're from. We tell him, insert city here, Connecticut. He starts listing cities around our hometown, and asks us a bunch of questions about Yale University. We get to our hotel, pay our fare, and immediately run to the front desk and reported what happened. The front desk clerk said that they don't typically work with that company, and that is why they don't recommend their guests going to other hotels and obtaining excursion vouchers. What would have happened next? Probably nothing, but with Natalee Holloway in our minds and the proven act of sex trafficking, anything was possible. To the guy that drove us in a sketchy serial killer van and took us to an abandoned ranch, let's not meet again. video game Super Mario Sunshine has always instilled a sense of anxiety in me. It brings me back to the memories of a troubled time when I was very anxious in the most innocent years of my life. When I was 5 years old, my family took me on a vacation to a sun-soaked island in the Mediterranean. I won't say which one, but it was a very popular destination for many. My memories of this vacation are happy for the most part, except for this next part. I remember going to dinner with my parents. My dad excused himself to go to the bathroom, and a random woman that I remember I did not know approached my mom, kindly greeting herself before leaning in and whispering something to my mom. The woman kept her eye on me and smiled while she whispered something to my mom. I remember my mom having this look of concern on her face, and the woman quickly walked away. I remember my mom talking to my dad in a very hushed tone when he returned. Both of them just looked at me. I don't remember if I asked a question or not, but I do remember for the rest of the vacation, I was kept very close to my parents, and my parents were constantly looking over their shoulders for the rest of the trip, as well as after the trip. As I grew older, I pushed these memories from my mind, until one time in my teen years, I remembered the trip because I was playing Super Mario Sunshine at the time and was reminiscing about it with my family. I then asked about that woman who had talked to my mom, and my mom was just straight up with me. She had told me that this woman had made a comment about how she would love to take me home and that she would do anything to have me. My mom obviously was very concerned with this, while my dad wasn't so much. But both of my parents told me that they did remember seeing this woman lingering around us for the rest of this trip. What they told me next was information I had never known about. They said that the morning that we were about to leave, to go back home, they had found a note on the hotel door that morning. They said the note they had found had said the same exact thing that she had told my mom, that she wanted their son. They continued keeping me close. My dad swears that he saw that woman at the airport, watching them. My mom said that it wasn't her, that she's not sure though. But that is how Mario Sunshine makes me think about how I was targeted for kidnapping when I was young. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you would like to see more vacation stories, make sure to let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you would like to see more, make sure to subscribe. We're doing nothing but growing. I've got a lot of content and a lot more coming, so just know that. Also, make sure to check out the links in the description like Twitter, Instagram, everything like that is in there, including my Gmail if you'd like to submit a story. I've got a lot of stories, and I would love to tell subscriber stories. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. Watch your kids during vacations. It's pretty obvious, but you need to do it. Okay, bye.